Hello and welcome to the Daily Climate Show. Here's what's making the news today. Farming for nature. Farmers in England will now be paid for being more environmentally friendly under new government plans. New analysis suggests the UK's electric vehicle charge point target is 20 years behind schedule. And environmentalists criticise the Kenyan government's methods for killing up to 6 million birds responsible for eating over 300 acres of crops. Hello and welcome to the Daily Climate Show, where we track the changes to our world and investigate some of the potential solutions to the climate crisis. Now, landowners and farmers across England will now be paid public money for protecting the environment and producing food more sustainably. New government subsidies give farmers bonuses for implementing environmentally friendly agricultural practices like managing crop pests without chemicals and working towards net zero. The Environment Secretary, Therese Coffey, said the new scheme would protect the planet and help produce food in a less environmentally damaging way.
I'm really pleased that the Sustainable Farming Initiative, where we've had 3 ways to access in the last year, we're opening up now a further 6 ways. And we focused on them in particular because we want to be able to hit our environmental and carbon targets. So we prioritised aspects that most farmers can get involved in. So whether that's about things to do with nutrient management, that building on the soil health, as well as support, particularly for upland farmers, that we've brought forward, recognising that we want to help farmers right across the country as we move this away from this basic payment system to them paying them to help us not only produce food sustainably, but also to help us improve the environment and achieve net zero.
Well, let's speak now to the Nature Friendly Farming Network's chair, Martin Lines, to get his views on all of this. Welcome to you, Martin. There were concerns, weren't there, that nature policies might be stripped out of the government's plans. But in fact, farmers are going to be able to receive government funding for up to 280 different actions that protect the environment. So do you welcome that?
Yeah, really welcome. There has been huge concern over the last few months about where government policy was going. But these actions actually will help farmers farming a more nature-friendly farming way and do actions across a farm landscape that will be rewarded by public money in that action that costs businesses to deliver. So it's a real positive step forward.
Well, yes, and let's look at one example in particular. Farmers are going to be encouraged to use predatory bugs rather than pesticides, for example. So how much do you think that the incentives will make a difference? How much will it change behaviour, do you think?
I think once farmers understand it and get behind what the government is asking them to do, I think they will really be incentivised to do that. On our own farm, we're putting flower strips around the outside of fields and across the middle of the fields to deliver that predatory insects and the pollinators. And we're seeing real positive results from that. So it's about how the farming industry can step up and communicate to other farmers that we're going to get a reward for delivering this, but it also has positive benefits for our farming, and farming and food production. And it's about how do we have the win-wins through delivering environmental improvements, moving away from those harmful insecticides and working with nature across our farm landscapes.
Well, yes, and you mentioned food production. How important is it that there is a balance between protecting the environment and making sure that we have food security and increased food production? Do these plans keep that balance in place?
Yeah, I think it's a fair balance. Could go further. We keep pushing government to make it go a bit further. But actually, a lot of what we produce as farmers isn't really food that consumers eat. We produce a range of goods and assets, and nature and climate mitigation must be front and centre alongside food production. And if we get the environment right and our climate mitigation right, we'll have food security in the future. And if we don't address the challenges we have as a society for climate and nature, that's where food production and food security will really be at risk. So these schemes and options will really help farming industry move in hopefully a more positive direction. And I urge all farmers to get involved because there's some really good values of payments for some of those outcomes.
There's also a landscape recovery plan, isn't there, that would encourage farmers to work together to rebuild an entire landscape, whether that's a salt marsh or an ancient woodland or a wetland, for example. There are some that are worried that isn't farming. They think that should be privately funded, for example. They think that the money should go towards sustainable farming instead. What's your view on that?
No, we've seen in the last round of applications, loads of farmers getting involved in working it at a landscape scale, delivering changes to that landscape alongside food production. It's just a matter of where we set the ability to produce things in a landscape. Some bits will be highly productive for food, others can have that nature recovery and that landscape approach for flood mitigation, tree planting, and other things. Farmers manage 70% of our landscape of the UK. So farmers will be helped to deliver that. And we have the opportunity of delivering a really multifunctional land use, delivering solutions that society needs in a changing climate and a changing landscape.
OK, Martin Lyons, very interesting to get your take on it. Thanks very much indeed. Now, here are some of the other stories making the news today. And the government is set to miss its target of installing 300,000 new electric chargers by 2030, by 20 years, according to opposition leaders. New analysis has found that there are now 30 electric vehicles for every charge point, fuelling fears that infrastructure is falling behind demand. Labour accused the government of being asleep at the wheel after fewer than 9,000 public electric charging points were installed last year. The government said it spent more than £2 billion to accelerate the transition to electric. Environmental lobby groups in Kenya have criticised plans by its government to kill up to 6 million red-billed quelea birds in response to the decimation of the country's rice crops. The ongoing drought has forced the red-billed quelea birds to feed on the crops, destroying 300 acres already. In 2021, crop losses to the bird amounted to $50 million. Farmers have now been authorised to spray a toxic pesticide to kill the birds. However, environmental lobby groups say this will have adverse effects on the environment.
It is unfortunate that this species has already been considered as a pest within our law. However, aerial poisoning of this bird is a bigger danger in the ecosystem because this would kill other species which are not targeted in this control. And this by itself, which increases the risk of environmental contamination, which is a danger to us and a danger to the entire ecosystem.
Green claims made about household essentials like food, drink and toiletries are to be investigated to make sure shoppers aren't being misled. The Competition and Markets Authority says it's concerned that shoppers are paying more for products that aren't as they seem and is part of a wider investigation into greenwashing. The CMA will analyse environmental claims made about products, such as their sustainability and how recyclable they are. The United States federal government has announced it's reinstating restrictions on road building and logging in the country's largest rainforest in Alaska. The US Department of Agriculture finalised plans to repeal a Trump administration-era decision that exempted the Tongass from the so-called roadless rule. It's a huge boost for the rainforest, which provides habitat for wildlife, including bears, wolves, bald eagles and salmon. And before we go, we want your climate questions. Anything that's ever mystified you about the environment or whatever you want to get to the bottom of. If you scan the QR code on your screen right now, you can send us your questions, which will be answered in The Climate Show with Tom Heap. And you'll be able to watch Tom's show on Saturday and Sunday at 3:30 here on Sky News. And this week, he's talking rubbish and why leaky landfills might lead to more of it clogging our rivers and oceans. But that's it from us for today. Do join us again on The Daily Climate Show at 3:30 tomorrow.